All right, everyone. Welcome back. I have a special treat here. It is truly my honor to introduce the former mayor from South Bend, Indiana, and the 19th Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. Secretary Buttigieg has been at the helm of the agency during an unprecedented time for our industry. As air travel returns, we truly appreciate his leadership in holding our airlines accountable for business decisions that have contributed to challenging delays and cancellations across the system. He has held the line on aviation safety against those who seek to weaken pilot training and experience requirements, saying we should be raising pilot wages, not lowering safety standards. Now, we're grateful to have such a strong partner at the Department of Transportation in maintaining the safety and the integrity of our air transportation network. And I want to recognize and thank the Secretary for acting on secondary barriers as well. This is a long overdue safety enhancement, and we thank him for his commitment to move that forward. Mr. Secretary, on behalf of the largest airline pilots union in the world, thank you for joining us, and welcome, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the chance to be with you. Thank you, Captain DePete, for everything you do and your leadership. Thank you to everyone in the Airline Pilots Association for everything that you do, keeping us safe and strong in the air. I was the kind of kid who grew up with posters of cockpits on the wall of my bedroom and aspired to be an airline pilot. Life took a different me, and I wound up involved in aviation in a very different way than I would have guessed. But my admiration for your profession has only grown since those years, and especially in the last 2 years, as we have seen all of the stresses and the challenges that the pandemic era brought in aviation, and that our airline pilots have met in such a remarkable way. These have been some of the most demanding and difficult moments for pilots in a long time. There was the threats presented by the virus itself, of course, but then the uneven rules for crews if you deplaned in other countries, the issue of unruly passengers, airlines encouraging employees at times to take buyouts or early retirements just before demand wound up rebounding rapidly. And so my main message really to all of you, to every pilot in ALPA, is to say thank you, because you had America's back. You helped keep America's economy up and running, and this administration has your back. First of all, the funding to preserve pilot jobs and help make sure that the aviation sector rebounded from the pandemic was a vitally important action that we took with your support early on, but that was just the start. And so I just want to highlight a couple other things, but promise to be very brief so that we can have more of a conversation. First, I want you to know we're holding strong on safety. And when it comes to the 1,500-hour rule, we know that is something that keeps us safe in the skies. Those kinds of rules, combined with the professionalism of you all and my colleagues over at FAA, have made aviation the safest mode of transportation. We have no intention of losing that distinction, even as we work to, of course, improve safety in every other mode of transportation. We also hear you loud and clear on the need to get this rulemaking done when it comes to secondary barriers to protect the flight deck. And while I can't speak to anything, of course, that is going on procedurally before an announcement is made publicly, I do want to reaffirm that that's a priority for us. And third, I want you to know we share your commitment to strengthening the pathways to get well-trained pilots into this career, and to make sure that those pathways are open to people who haven't always seen themselves represented in the flight deck today. One of the best parts of my job has been engaging young people, and we've been out around the country doing that. We were at Fly Compton in LA, we were at the Aviate Academy in Arizona, even high schools like Davis Aerospace and Maritime High School in Cleveland, educational institutions like Texas Southern University, visiting their aviation science management program in Houston. We see these great future pilots around the country, and we know that the sector and the economy can't afford to leave any talent on the table. So I'll stop there because I am eager for our conversation, but I want to again say thank you. Physical infrastructure has been in the news a lot, and rightly so, as we're making investments in America's roads and bridges, our rail and transit, our ports, and of course our airports, doing more than we've been able to do there in the better part of the century. But it's clear to me that just as important, indeed the most important part of our transportation sector is the human beings who make it work. And that ranges from our train engineers and conductors to our bus operators, our employees here at the U.S. DOT, and absolutely our pilots, because without you, the best infrastructure in the world still wouldn't be enough. So I'm so pleased to be with you and looking forward to the conversation we're about to have.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Really appreciate your support and the support of the White House. It's been truly refreshing and a long time coming, so we really do appreciate the labor support and your position on many important issues that we face today. The Secretary has agreed to take a few questions. And remember, we're virtual here today, so please, when you come to the microphone, clearly state your name, right, and your question clearly, because it may get lost a little bit with the virtual meeting. So please, I will acknowledge microphone number 2, please.
Secretary Buttigieg, thank you for joining us today and speaking with us. My question, again, I am Darren Hartman, a captain at Delta Airlines representing the pilots of Council 20 in Detroit. Recently, the Department of Transportation approved a joint venture between Delta Airlines and LATAM. The department ordered removal of a clause that ensures that unionized pilots at Delta Airlines receive an equitable share of flying. This decision harms pilots and creates a precedent for the Department of Transportation to remove protections for workers. This is both a mistake without precedent and represents a step backward for the Department of Transportation. It is not what we expect from the Biden administration's pro-union agenda. Can you explain whether the department believes it has the public's best interest to promote fair wages and working conditions for U.S. pilots? And why, in this case, did the department believe it was wise to create a precedent where employee interests are considered to be in conflict with the consumer interests?
Thank you for the question, and I appreciate the concern around the implications of these joint ventures, knowing that this is something that comes up from time to time. And we know that joint ventures can be a very important means for U.S. carriers to expand their international flying in highly competitive markets. But we also know that they require a high level of scrutiny, and we scrutinize every application that comes in for a JV. We monitor the existing joint ventures as well to make sure that the interests of consumers and airline workers are met. Look, we're not interested in approving alliances that can serve to restrict competition, that can lower capacity, or anything that could lead to reduced opportunities for airliners in the U.S. At the same time, when we see an opportunity that can benefit workers, airlines, the U.S. sector, and consumers, then we are interested in finding a way to support that. So we will continue to require very detailed, confidential annual reports that outline the carrier's future plans and that retrospectively discuss the alliance initiatives that are taken up. And we're going to continue to be driven by the data and the documentation there. But our goal and our intention here is about expanding flying opportunities for airline workers and lowering fares for passengers. And we continue to respect and take very seriously the input and the data that organizations like yours can bring to bear on this.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'm going to jump around here to microphone 10.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Despite the significant government aid, as you mentioned, many of the professionals I work with were proud to be ready to transport PPE, and that support allowed us to be ready to drive the economy forward, and we're seeing that rebound now. Unfortunately, not every airline planned appropriately for that. So it became a talking point to say that bad managing was the result of a pilot shortage rather than the business decisions those airlines made. That talking point is now being used to undermine the Air Safety Act of 2010 and to change, effectively roll back the protections of the first officer qualification rules. Can we count on your and the department's support in defending those qualifications, experience, and training standards for pilots to ensure we have two highly trained, well-rested, and experienced pilots on the flight deck of every flight that falls under the jurisdiction of the FAA?
Well, thank you. And yeah, count on our continued strong support here. Look, the fact that we need our qualified, safe pilot workforce more than ever isn't grounds for weakening or softening our belief in just how qualified and how safe we need pilots to be. It's a call to redouble our efforts. And frankly, of course, we respect and take seriously our role. But there's a role that, and the primary role that employers need to take here in cultivating that pipeline for pilot talent to make its way into the cockpit. Of course, we're interested in ways that we can work with any partner who wants to help us get more people into that pipeline, help more people succeed in earning their qualifications, and importantly, help pilots or would-be pilots afford to be part of that process. It's one of the reasons why I welcome some of the steps we have seen some airlines take toward responding to workforce availability issues in the pilot workforce with better pay. Usually when you hear about a so-called shortage in a labor space, the first question I'm going to have is, are you paying enough? And I think that the market will respond there. But we'll continue to be ready to partner in any number of ways with anybody who can bring solutions, but not at the expense of safety or the very high standards that your members have met and that the public rightly expects. I sometimes cite the incredible statistics of our safety record in terms of the U.S. airline sector. And people sometimes, I can see them kind of instinctively knock on wood. And I say we don't knock on wood here. We see to it that it remains the case. And you have my commitment that that's going to continue to be a bedrock focus for this department.
Thanks, Mr. Secretary. I know you have a very tight schedule. There's only two more questions standing at the mic. So do you have time to take the two?
I'm sure we do, yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Microphone number 6, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for speaking to us. My name is Andy Kinnear. I'm a captain at Spirit Airlines, and I represent about 420 captains at that airline. We're seeing a troubling increase in the misuse of U.S. employment visas by some airlines when qualified U.S. pilots are available. These carriers push to use E3, H-1B, and EB-2 visas to fill pilot positions, displaces and undercuts wages for qualified U.S. pilots, and undermines pilot unions' rights to fair representation. It is also inconsistent with the Biden administration's commitment to empowering U.S. workers. Can you work with the Department of Homeland Security to ensure that the pilot segment of the transportation workforce is not outsourced or otherwise undermined? Thank you.
Well, thanks for that. And again, we want to make sure that we're doing right by our U.S. aviation workforce and by the sector as a whole. Now, of course, there are appropriate means for making sure we can maximize U.S. talent, but we never want that to be an end run around our high labor standards and qualification standards that we have here. And so I welcome the opportunity to continue working with you and with partners on this issue and on making sure that any measures that are taken around workforce aren't some way to undermine the strong protections that we have here at home.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Microphone 11.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here available and letting us ask you questions. My name is Noel Ojeda. I'm a 777 captain in San Francisco for United Airlines. I represent a little more than 750 United captains there. So with an eye towards furthering globalization. For decades, the DOT has advanced the interests of consumers and competition ahead of those of the airline worker. Now that we've seen the downsides of competition in light of the fact that the DOT's statute puts those on equal footing, what is your office doing to kind of swing the pendulum towards the center and make sure that we're given that consideration?
So I think you're speaking to a really important and complex balance that we've got to strike. Competition policy is very important to us. It's important to our economy. It's certainly important to the administration because we know that if you have anti-competitive practices, that can be harmful to consumers and ultimately be harmful to the economy. But I do think sometimes because of that, that fidelity we have to a competitive marketplace, we take it very seriously and we lean into it in a lot of ways. But sometimes that it comes with a presumption that anytime you have a new entrant in a complex market, that is a white knight that can only bring good things. And while of course we believe in a level playing field and fair competition, we've also seen a lot of ways that sometimes there is a kind of a countervailing pressure here where actors emerge asking for flexibility or even special treatment in the name of competition, but are arriving in ways that present real concerns and questions about labor practices or other things that are also very important policy concerns for us. And so that is something that we're trying to get right in terms of the balance of policy focus here. How do you maintain a competitive aviation sector that is offering prices that are fair and reasonable and a passenger experience that is positive for the traveling public, especially given some of the frustrations that have been experienced in recent months and across the pandemic period. But also, how do we make sure that as we're doing that, we're not doing it in a way that somehow lowers the bar by assuming that any kind of player who comes into the picture is doing so with just as much fidelity to the treatment of workers and to the high standards that we expect as the incumbents do. And I think we have to be honest about the fact that the aviation sector has never been, pre or post deregulation, a normal textbook market the way you have a market for some kind of consumer goods. That the right kind of attention by, yes, competition authorities, which includes us, and of course with DOJ in the lead, but also with us as a safety regulator and with the role that we play around environmental and labor and other standards, certainly in the domestic context, but also to some extent in terms of our commitments at ICAO too, that we're taking the equities of workers seriously too. And look, if we get this right, then there should be no real conflict between what benefits consumers and passengers, what benefits workers, whether it's flight crews or whether it's workers on the ground. But that's a big if, and I get how those equities have been put into tension. It's something we're trying to do right by all the time.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Sir, before you go, I just want to say that on behalf of our 66,000 members in the United States and Canada, we appreciate you taking the time today to come by. This has been a good day for us. We had Captain Sully Sullenberger also address the group today, reflective of the pride that we have in this profession and maintaining this profession. We appreciate your assistance in that. And I want to personally also thank you for the many times you've given us access in terms of the Transportation Trades Department and the entire AFL-CIO. So we thank you, and back over to you for the last comments, sir.
Great. Well, let me reciprocate these thanks. I appreciate what you have done and what this organization has done to help us advance good policy in aviation and policy that we think benefits the traveling public. And we're going to continue to need to be working together and to be in close touch, given all of the issues that we see up ahead. Restoring the kind of fluidity and resilience we need to the U.S. airline sector, dealing with the that are coming our way for the future, including making sure that this sector is sustainable and successful for the long run, Certainly, we have, I think, a mutual interest in getting it right when it comes to cultivating a pipeline of a new, qualified, talented, and diverse generation of pilots. I know that we'll be able to turn to each other in many ways along that road. So we'll have much more to discuss, I'm sure, by the next time you convene in terms of some of the work that's underway on the regulatory side. In the meantime, since I know I rarely speak to this many pilots at once, I hope you'll say hello if you see me from the cockpit. I'll probably be on your medal a few more hundred times while I have this job, and always appreciate seeing you all on the flight deck in the airports and out into the communities that you're such an important part of. So thanks again for having me, and I'll see you out and about.
Okay, thank you, sir, and we appreciate Polly Trottenberg also at the Air Safety Forum, so thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you. The Secretary.
Thanks, Mike.